So,
before going on the air today, you were talking about a home fire safety checklist, and I was wondering if you could share that with our viewers this morning.
Sure. So yeah, in the fall of 2014, the Red Cross nationwide introduced a new program, the Home Fire Preparedness Campaign, in an effort to reduce the number of home fire-related deaths and injuries across the country by 25%. So our goal is over the next 5 years to reduce that number by 25%. And the way that we're doing that is getting out into communities, educating them about fire safety, and offering free smoke alarms to people who may be in need and not be able to afford them themselves. So it's been a really cool program to be a part of, because it's making a tangible difference in people's lives and it's saving people's lives. Across the country, since the campaign started, there have been 15 lives confirmed saved through smoke alarms or education provided through this program. And nationwide, we've installed now 100,000 smoke alarms. So it's pretty amazing, and it's not going to stop. We're only in the first year of this campaign, and we really want to continue it and take it further and save more lives.
You have some advice for viewers, and the first one is like, it's an obvious one. I can't believe people still do this. Don't smoke in bed.
Oh yeah, that's probably one of the #1 causes of home fires, is smoking in bed. So there are some very simple tips, and we'll come into your home and talk you through them. I was actually out at one of these events that we did in the Amsterdam area. And we had a family that was bilingual, so we had one of our fire safety educators going through all these tips about don't smoke in bed, if a fire starts from cooking, how do you put it out, don't leave the stove unattended, things like that. So he was going through all these tips in English with the head of the household, and she was then translating them for the other members of her house that spoke Spanish. And then we went down. There were 2 stories in the house, so we did the same thing upstairs and downstairs. And as we were downstairs, our fire safety educator was going through the same tips, but he missed one. And the woman who had been translating for him upstairs was like, "Oh, you forgot to tell them, don't smoke in bed." So I thought that was really neat. Clearly people are taking this information to heart and remembering what we're saying, and hopefully they're going to be a little bit safer because of it.
One thing I've noticed that you suggest that people have a home fire escape plan.
Yes.
In other words, practice before the fire actually starts. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So we did a poll nationwide. The Red Cross polled people all over to find out how long they thought they'd have to escape their home if their smoke alarm started going off and there was indeed a fire. And the answer is less than 2 minutes. So a lot of people don't realize that. They think maybe they have 5-10 minutes to get their things together and get out. But because it's really such a short amount of time, we recommend that people have 2 ways to escape from every room in their house, which can be kind of tricky to plan out if you do have, a 2-story home, or not every house or room in your house has windows. So to really sit down with your family and talk about what you would do if you did have to escape your home. Where would you meet? Is there a place down the road? Would you meet at the stop sign, the mailbox? If you had to be away from your home and people were escaping from different rooms, that's another important piece, just to have a plan with your family.
Another thing you've suggested, and this one seems obvious, keep matches away from kids and keep them in a safe place.
Yeah, and just talk to your kids about fire safety, because they may not realize that it's not safe to play with matches, or if you have, maybe you light candles in your home and you have a lighter laying around, to talk to your kids about the fact that it's not safe to play with those things. And to talk with them, it can be a fun thing to do with your kids, to sort of map out your house and draw the ways that you would escape. It doesn't have to be something just the adults worry about. To teach the kids about that, and not make them scared, but just make them confident that they would know what to do if there was a fire in their home.
And one I saw here, which is an in the Condon house, for appliance safety, don't use electric leads. Okay, I'm going to handle that one. Plug directly into a wall outlet. Why is that so important?
Well, I think the big thing is, if you do have to use those leads, that you want to make sure they're safe, they're not getting tangled up with a bunch of other things, they are not old or starting to sort of fray around the edges, because the farther your lead is going, the more risk you have that you could have an electrical fire.
Another thing that for safety in the house, keep furniture at least 3 feet away from the fireplaces, the space heaters, and the baseboards.
Especially in the wintertime, this is a big one. If you have holiday decorations around your home and you're also using space heaters, or you have baseboard heaters, to make sure, those things can easily catch on fire if you have curtains hanging nearby, or, maybe like a furnished ottoman or something right next to your space heater, just to keep them 3 feet away. We say 3 feet from the heat. Easy to remember. But that can go a long way to making sure that you avoid having a fire in your home.
One thing the Red Cross is noted for is lifeguard training and swimming lessons. You want to talk about that a little?
Sure, yes.
And that's not just a summer thing.
No, it's not. It's actually, I learned this year, that we don't do a ton of lifeguard training in the summertime, because that's when the lifeguards need to be out there working. So it's actually in the earlier spring months that we're training lifeguards so that they're ready to work through the summer months and be out at the pools and keeping people safe. We also do teach swimming lessons. We teach a lot. We also have an app, a mobile app for swimming. If you search for Red Cross in your app store, you can get swimming safety tips and also some instructional type things. If you have younger kids who are learning how to swim and maybe learning from the Red Cross, that could be a cool way to augment that training. To
receive lifeguard certification in New York State, is that through Red Cross training, or is it through New York State that you have to pass the test?
No, there are different providers of the instruction. The Red Cross is one of them, but yes, you can be certified by the Red Cross and then be a lifeguard somewhere in the state.
Now, the Red Cross is an international organization, and you have international services which teach the rules of war in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan. You want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, we do have
Leaving
some.
New York State.
Yeah, we have some international humanitarian law programs, and that's based out of beyond the American Red Cross. The Red Cross is an international movement, as you said, and so there are Red Cross chapters or societies all over the world. And our sort of guiding body is the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent societies. In some communities, we're symbolized by a crescent shape rather than the cross. And so that International Federation is based out of Geneva, Switzerland, and where the Geneva Convention occurred, and just talking about, like you said, the rules of war and humanitarian law. Those programs are in place all over the world.
How does the Red Cross handle those, and I think of ISIS, that ignore the rules of war?
Well, we are an impartial and a neutral agency, so our ultimate mission is to care for people in need, to alleviate human suffering in any situation. I can't speak too well to some of the more international conflict-based issues that the Red Cross may deal with, but those Red Cross societies in those other countries certainly are involved in those issues, and their primary purpose is to care for those who may be suffering, regardless of what their political or religious beliefs may be.
Well, you guys have always been the ones that people have turned to internationally in times of conflict, going back to, well, how old is the Red Cross?
I believe
say
the
World
Red
War
Cross,
II, maybe you were there World War I,
Oh no,
too.
the Red Cross is over 135 years old. So we started, the Red Cross movement, not just in the United States, dates back further than that. The American Red Cross is over 135 years old.
One thing I want to talk about before we wrap it up today, you you're the communicator all the time, but you're looking for volunteers in the area of communications to help you with new and traditional media. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, yeah.
And how is the new media impacting the Red Cross?
It's a great way for us to be communicating our message and giving real-time updates about the work that we're doing. So to be able to use social media to say we're responding to a fire this evening, or we have a shelter open at this location. It's a really great way to be able to get information out to people as they need it. In terms of the volunteers, I'm very lucky to work with a bunch of volunteers who help to spread the word about the work that we do. They help me send out press releases. They help write stories about the clients we serve, the volunteers that we work with. So they're a great group of people. I know the same is true all over the state, that there are volunteers doing that type of work, and we can always use more of them because there are so many stories to tell.
What are some of the events and conferences that your office is responsible for in New York State that you need volunteers to help with?
We are invited to a lot of different fairs and events to talk about emergency preparedness, safety issues. So we do rely a lot on volunteers to go out and represent us at those types of events. We also have fundraising events across the state that help to support the work that we do. Like I said, we are all dependent on the generosity of the public. So we have volunteers who come out and help check people in, welcome them to our events, and help us raise money.
What are some of the fundraising events that the Red Cross has?
We have a number of gala style events, you know, with the silent auction and dinner and dancing. We have a big one of those in Saratoga every year. We have others across the state. We also, the Red Cross has kind of a unique event that we do all across the country called the Real Heroes Breakfast, where we honor individuals in local communities who have performed heroic acts or done something that's brave or courageous to serve their community. So we have those events in Albany, Utica, Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, all over. But each one is a little bit different because it is focused on local people making a local impact, and they're feel-good events that just remind you that there are really good people out there.
Now, being in the capital of New York State, where they have lobbyists, you have a lot to do with government relations, and you're always looking for volunteers to deal with local and state legislators. You want to talk about what kind of volunteers you're looking for there?
Sure. We do have a team dedicated to state relations in New York State. So most of those people are based in the Albany area, but we really have volunteers and staff who work across the state to make sure that, you know, this partnership for the Citizen Preparedness Corps that we're doing with Governor Cuomo and New York State, that wouldn't have happened without these state relations workers. So we're looking really for people who kind of have that background to help volunteer in that area and are comfortable talking about the work that we do on the statewide level with elected officials.
Does one, when they go to the legislature, are you requiring them to be a registered lobbyist so they can deal with our members of the assembly? Because I know that's a law in New York State. You have to be registered. A lot of what our volunteers in this state relations team do is really more about educating our elected officials about the work that we're doing in their districts. So they may not be going and talking face to face with an assemblyman, but maybe they're putting together a newsletter or a written document that kind of highlights the disaster responses, the blood drives, and the other work that we've been doing in their community on a monthly or quarterly basis. As we wrap up the show, what is the one need that the Red Cross has, whether it be volunteers or donations, that you would really like to get across to our viewers today?
That's a tough question because it's really both of those things. I do think volunteers is probably the number one need that we have. We, of course, always need financial donations, and we're fortunate to have dedicated donors and dedicated volunteers, but we could really use more of both of those. The thing is that if we get all the donations in the world and we don't have the volunteers to help us go out and do the work, we're not going to get as far as we want. So that's why I would pick volunteers as the number one need.
Well, Kimmy Venter, I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning. Kimmy is the Red Cross Director of Communications for Eastern New York, and people can go to your website and get additional information, right?
Yes, definitely.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I'm Joe Condon. Have yourself a wonderful day, and check out the Red Cross website.